Hey everyone, me again. Today I'm going to be doing a foundation review for you. It's been a little while since I've done a foundation review. I don't know, I just really couldn't find any on the market that I was interested in trying out, but I actually really do love filming foundation reviews. I've got a whole playlist of foundation review videos that I will leave in the description box for you, but I'm filming one today because I stumbled across this. This is the L'Oreal True Match foundation, which is not a new release by any means. This launched ages and ages ago and it was reformulated a couple of years ago, but when it was reformulated they didn't actually have a shade that matched me, which is quite ironic given the name. But then last time I was in Superdrug I found this is the shade 0.5N, so this must be a new release. I don't know when exactly they launched this, so by the looks of it this is their new lightest shade. They did have another 0.5 as well. I think they had one in a different undertone, but this looks like the palest one to me. So that's the one that I've picked up and I'm really excited to be able to try this because I have heard so many good things about the L'Oreal True Match foundation. Apparently the formula is really good and I've never been able to try it out. Before we get started, I should probably mention that this cost £9.99 and you get 30ml of product, which is pretty standard in the UK drugstore. It also says on like the adverts for this and on the bottle that it improves skin quality in 2 weeks, which I find quite interesting. So what I might do if I really like the foundation, if I wear it quite a lot, is I might do a follow-up post to this on my blog at redsmakeup.blog and just let you know if it actually does improve my skin quality. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical about that, but I might as well do a follow-up post and let you know. Anyway, let's chuck this on my face and see what we think. So I always wear a primer every single time I put foundation on. My skin is too dry to skip that step, so I'm going to do that today. So there are two that I really like. There's the Revolution Gold Elixir Rosehip Seed Oil, which you can use as primer or as part of your skincare routine. And I also really like the Revolution Baking Oil as well. Today I'm using the Rosehip Seed Oil. The false nails that I'm wearing today are incredibly impractical for this video, but they are pretty, aren't they? They're from Primark, by the way. They were £2 if you're wondering. So I'm probably going to apply the foundation with a brush on half of my face and then with a sponge on the other half, just so that we can see if there's any difference. I'm really happy that this foundation has a pump. This is what a pump looks like. Don't even know if you can see that, but it's a fairly decent amount of product. It seems like a fairly liquidy consistency. It is kind of moving around a bit on the back of my hand, but it's not so liquidy that it's just dripping off the sides. So on this side of my face, I'm going to use the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush because it was the only brush that I had that's actually clean. Please don't judge me. The colour looks pretty good. It matches my neck perfectly. The undertone's really nice. It is actually a neutral undertone. It seems like the kind of formula that you could sheer out or build up a bit. So I would call this a kind of light coverage, but maybe it's one that I can build up to a solid medium. You can see I have a lot of redness on my skin. It's kind of a curse of being ginger, and some of the redness is still peeking through on this side, especially kind of in the most prominent area around here, around my cheeks and my jaw. That kind of happens with a lot of foundations. So this is definitely one that I would want to build up, but maybe if you don't have as much of an uneven skin tone as I do, you might be able to just wear it quite sheer if that's what you're into. So I'm going to apply it with the AOA Paw sponge on the other side of my face, and then I'm going to try building it up a bit and see what we think after that. Okay, I think I like the sponge a lot better. The coverage actually looks better with the sponge. I don't know how that's possible. Did I just dip way too much product in the sponge or something? But yeah, it's normally the other way around, isn't it? Normally you get more coverage with a brush. But on this side, I am getting a little smidge more coverage. I'll still have to build it up, but it looks better on the first go. It's also applying a lot more smoothly as well. On the other side, there were some bits that looked a little bit streaky that I just had to pat over a couple of times. It wasn't a big deal or anything, but yeah, on the sponge side, the application is definitely a lot easier, a lot quicker. So I would definitely recommend a sponge for this foundation. I'm just looking at the application now. Yeah, I definitely feel like the sponge side has gone on a lot smoother. It's got a really nice blurring effect going on. The side of the brush isn't bad, it just doesn't look anywhere near as natural. It definitely looks like I do have makeup on. So I'm just going to smooth over everything with the sponge to get it looking a little bit more even. and then I'm just going to keep layering with the sponge, I think. For my whole face I used 1 pump, so I think as I build it up I'll probably end up using maybe 2 full pumps, 2.5, we'll see. It seems to be building up really well. It's not like getting cakey or anything, which is really nice. So as predicted, I've got about 2.5 pumps of foundation on my face, and I think this is about the most that I can build it up to. It's about a solid medium coverage. There's still some redness poking through, and there's still some spots that I'm going to conceal as well. But do keep in mind that the foundation does not claim to be the most high coverage thing in the world. It actually says on the bottle that it's a super blendable foundation. So to me that sounds like something that's a bit more of a light coverage, which is what I got on the first layer. It is starting to set a little bit now on my skin. I think it's going to almost a satin finish maybe. It's not too unflattering on my dry skin. There's still definitely a little bit of a glow. I can see on the screen on my camera that my skin is still kind of reflecting the light in this room, and I am still looking a little bit glowy, which is nice, but it definitely has set a little bit. There are some patches where my skin is looking a little bit drier, like the bit right here, but to be honest that is pretty common with a lot of foundations. That's been happening all the time recently, and I'm starting to wonder if that is just my skin. It's maybe not the most flattering on my forehead. That's where I get a lot of dryness as well. I don't think it's quite as smoothing and blurring as something like the Maybelline Dream Satin foundation, which has a similar coverage, but this shade is definitely a better match than the Maybelline Dream Satin foundation. But I'd say for most of my face it's actually looking okay, and maybe because it's set down a little bit, that means that I'll be able to get some more wear out of this foundation, so that would be pretty good. It does look like it's going a little bit more yellow and a little bit darker as it sets, but it's so subtle that I don't think I would notice it if I wasn't filming this review. So all in all, we have a pretty good contender for a solid everyday foundation here. So I'm going to put on the rest of my makeup and then I'll come back and have another chat with you. I'll try not to put on too much concealer, but as I said, because there is a little bit of redness and some spots showing, I am going to have to conceal just a smidge, but I will be right back. Okay, so the rest of my makeup is on. I was worried when I initially applied the foundation that it did look a little bit dry and a bit unforgiving. It did seem to be clinging to a lot of drier areas around my face. But now that my makeup is done, I don't know if it's just because it's had a chance to settle into the skin a bit, or if it's because I've used my normal Revolution fixing spray and that's just kind of helped it mesh in there a bit better. But it looks alright now. Everything looks a lot more seamless. It looks a lot more forgiving. I did powder my skin with the Revolution Skin Finish in Luminescence. That's my favourite setting powder, especially when my base is looking a little bit on the dry side. I always powder my foundation every single time I do my makeup, even if a foundation kind of sets a bit like this one appeared to do. Just because I layer my base products so much, it just makes more sense to me to just lock it down in place a bit more. So yeah, at the moment I really like how it looks, and my skin definitely has a nice glow to it, but at the same time, if you look really closely, you can see that it's definitely set on my skin. I do think my forehead is looking a little bit dry, and definitely the areas where I built it up kind of around my jaw, they do look like they've oxidized a little bit, but all in all, I'm very, very happy with how it looks. I would happily leave the house with this foundation on. I think it's a bit too early to say whether this is going to be an absolute favorite product of mine, but there are a few things that I really like about it so far. I really liked how blendable it was, how easy it was to chuck on my face. I really like the shade of it. I think the shade is very spot on for me. I am a light neutral undertone, which is surprisingly difficult to find in UK drugstores. I think the price is very fair for the amount of product you get, and I do like the packaging as well. I like the fact that it has a pump. So it's currently 3:15 in the afternoon, and I'm going to keep this on for as long as I feel like. I don't know exactly how long just yet. So I'm going to try and leave this on for at least 5 or 6 hours. I feel like that's a decent wear test for me. I don't normally tend to wear my makeup for the entire day, and I feel like by the 5 or 6 hour mark we'll have a pretty good idea of if this foundation is long wearing or not. So as I said, everything looks mostly okay now. I do think it's a little bit more on the drier side, but maybe that'll help it wear a bit better. We'll see. So far everything's looking pretty good, but I'll come back in about 5 or 6 hours and give you my final thoughts. Hey guys, so it's the end of the day now. It's about 9:45 in the evening, which means I have had this foundation on for roughly 6.5 hours. For me, that's a pretty good standard amount of time for a wear test, just because I don't typically wear foundation for the entire day, and if I do, I really don't expect it to look good by the end of it, you know what I mean? So there are definitely some signs of wear, especially down like the center of my face. That's not a surprise, that is where my foundation does tend to break down the most. You can see around my chin, because I have obviously eaten since I last saw you, that some of the makeup has worn away, and I do have a few of my spots around there kind of peeking through the surface now. It's also broken down around my nose quite a bit, just on my nose itself and just around the sides here. My forehead isn't looking great. It has definitely clung to some dry patches, and I can also see it clinging to some dryness just on this side of my face as well. I do have a bit of a problem with dryness just around here. So yeah, it definitely does look a little bit dry, which is surprising to me just because of the way this foundation was described. I was really expecting it to be a little bit more dewy, but that being said, it's definitely not the worst foundation in the world either. It has worn away a little bit, but I haven't really touched up my makeup at all since I last saw you. Before I pressed the record button, I did just go over some of the areas with my makeup sponge that I used earlier, just to see if that would make things look a little bit fresher. And for me, this is kind of okay, especially considering the amount of time I've been wearing the foundation. And I definitely have foundations in my collection where I look a little bit oilier by this point, where I look a bit more kind of dewy, when my makeup is broken down a lot more. So yes, I do look a bit drier than I thought I would, but on the other hand, that has also helped the makeup to stick around a bit longer too. So it swings and roundabouts really. It really depends on what you're looking for in a foundation. For me, I can see why a lot of people use this as their everyday go-to foundation and why it's so popular, because it goes on really easily. And yes, it is a bit drying, but that does help it to stay in place longer. So if you want something that will survive your full day in the office, or if you just don't really have time to touch up your makeup, that kind of thing, this could potentially be the foundation for you. So I'll try and wrap up this video and just give you some overall thoughts. I really liked the packaging, I liked the shade, I liked the price, I like how liquidy the formula is and how easy it is to apply. I feel like whether you use a brush, a sponge, or even just your fingertips, I feel like this is going to go on really, really easily. And I like that it's relatively long lasting, especially considering that it's not like a super matte foundation. Cons of this foundation, it does look a little bit more drying than I expected. It also oxidizes just a fraction. For me, it still looks perfectly fine, but if you are paler than me, this isn't going to work because this is the lightest one that they have. Also, I guess a con is that it's taken them a few years to release this paler shade. I don't really know why they didn't have it from the get-go, and I don't know how good the shade range is for people who are at the other end of the spectrum, for people who have a really deep dark skin tone. So yeah, I guess that's a con as well. All in all, I would say it's a perfectly decent everyday foundation, and if you tend to have a long day of wear for your makeup, I think you'll probably really get on with this. I think that's everything from me today. Let me know in the comment section if you've tried this foundation. Did you like it? Did you get on with it? How do you normally wear it? Let me know, let's have a chat down there. If you're new around here, subscribe if you want to see more of me. I do a lot of foundation reviews, and I only talk about affordable makeup on my channel. I make videos every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesdays as well when I can get my act together, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!